I hope that the video gives you some real personal sense of what an incredible opportunity this is for all of us in this room today. The great Nelson Mandela brought together the leaders of the world that he thought were among the top in promoting peace and encouraging diversity and teaching us all what we need to know to be better citizens of this place and this planet. And for them to be here in the room with us today is just an incredible inspirational opportunity. As I look into the audience too, I'm so thrilled to see so many young people here, so many people who have made the effort to listen, to care, to learn. You're in a chapter of your life that is going to really help shape your visions for the future. And quite frankly, those of us who are much older are hoping that you're going to do a really good job and probably a better job than we have at shaping that future. We hope our program today, Leaders Make the Future, the wisdom of elders and youngers, will ignite within you the determination to make our community more vibrant, tolerant, and empathetic. Now, the Pillars of Peace Hawaii, a program of the Hawaii Community Foundation, was started in 2012 to inspire our community to practice compassion, mindfulness, and justice. Through that program, we've been encouraged by His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, to advance peace through the power of aloha. And we've been reminded by Aung San Suu Kyi that peace takes courage and compassion. This year, the elders are going to encourage you to become the solution in your future through learning to be ethical leaders, and we're going to talk about what that means. The Pillars of Peace Hawaii program would not be possible, however, for any of us without the generous support of Pierre and Pam Omidyar. So please join me in thanking them, Pierre and Pam, because we are very, very grateful for your support and your commitment to encourage the young people of Hawaii to practice peace in their daily lives. It's a concept that is so important. At this time now, I'd like to introduce Pam Omidyar. As a parent and humanitarian, Pam has dedicated her life to fostering peace where there is turmoil, and joy where there is hatred, and courage where there is fear. Pam grew up right here in Hawaii. She's one of our locals. She attended Iolani School. She not only knows about the aloha spirit, but she lives it every day at home, at work, and when she's out in the ocean, and I know she loves to surf. Pam has a passion for science and a love of humanity, and she's found creative ways to combine those elements into her life's work through the founding of Hope Lab and Humanity United. A member of the advisory board for the elders, Pam is an enthusiastic supporter, enabling the elders to do their work. She connects with the fact that the elders are about honoring differences while still making connections. Pam's energetic mind, dedication to her work, and her sincere heart make her a model for all of us. This woman loves this work and believes in it deeply. Please join me in welcoming Pam Omidyar to the stage.
Aloha and welcome. Kim, thanks for that wonderful introduction. And I'm really looking forward to our conversation this morning. And I really thank you all for being here. I'd also like to thank the Hawaii Community Foundation for their hard work and most generous support of the Pillars of Peace initiative. Pillars of Peace is unique to our island community and a true gift that allows for an authentic conversation with some of the most well-respected global peace leaders of our time. Today, our guests are drawn from a unique organization known as the Elders, a group of some of the most profound leaders of our time. But this morning's dialogue is as much about the elders as it is about you. It's a chance for different generations, cultures, and traditions to engage on why ethical leadership matters. And we look forward to hearing what's on your minds. The elders encompass 12 people, 7 men and 5 women from 5 continents. And you saw from the video several of those elders that are not here with us today, including Mary Robinson, former President of Ireland, President Jimmy Carter of the US, and Ela Bhatt of India. I'd also like to mention that Aung San Suu Kyi, who was our Pillars of Peace guest as well, that the elders kept an empty chair for her during their meetings when she was under house arrest, and they helped champion her cause. Now, I'm drawn to the vision of the elders based on Hawaii's own deep history. Our kupuna are respected and looked to for counsel in matters big and small. Their lifetime of experience helps shape their point of view and provides guidance to those who follow. The elders group was formed upon a similar concept. Based on a tradition that has existed for millennia, elders are known for listening patiently and respectfully offering their immense collective wisdom towards solutions and transformative positive change. Sadly, as the world becomes more interconnected and hyper-informative, it feels as if the need for elder wisdom is slowly eroding. The elders work on a global level to remind us of the immense value of this wisdom. They embrace technology and harnessing our global connectivity to more broadly share their values and experiences with an ever-expanding worldwide audience. It is their hope and our responsibility to ensure that we avoid the pitfalls of the past and instead learn from our collective human experience. Like other pillars of peace leaders and global peacemakers, the elders share a common set of values: courage, integrity, equality, perseverance, and of course, a deep sense of compassion. The honor of serving as an elder is not one that's bestowed lightly. They are change makers and peace builders who have truly altered the course of history for the better through their actions. What each has done is to leave the world better than the way they found it and work together towards a more just and inclusive peace. The elders represent an independent voice, no longer bound by the interests of any nation, government, or institution. They are committed to promoting universal human rights. Their mission is so far-reaching and seeks to solve some of the world's most intractable problems, from launching a campaign to end child marriage and empower young girls and women, to working actively with Iran to encourage them to be a stabilizing force in the region, to standing together in a call to reverse the course of climate change and hold worldwide leaders accountable. The elders are involved in significant global conversations. The elders' vision has remained constant since their inception, to help create a world where people live in peace, conscious of their common humanity and their shared responsibilities. It was a direct call from Nelson Mandela in the first days of the formation of the elders, which brings our guests here today. With the aim of empowering young people and promoting intergenerational dialogue, President Mandela told the elders that there's just not a deep value in sharing their experiences with young people, but that there's much they can learn by also listening to youth. Since then, the Elders Plus Youngers program has engaged young people around the world and encouraged youth leadership. Today's conversations about leaders making the future, the wisdom of elders and youngers, continues that dialogue. And today, you are joining that conversation and that movement. For the students here, I know this is your day off from school, but I encourage you to be curious about what you hear today and listen with open hearts. I hope you will think about who in your own life has wisdom from which you might benefit. Seek out those people and ask some questions and learn from their experiences and develop your own meaning and purpose in this world. Your generation is the largest youth generation in the history of the world. Every generation says it will fix the mistakes of the prior generations. But let's instead say that we will work together across generations and cultures to make the changes necessary for all people and our planet to thrive. Now, it's an honor to introduce our guests today. Each has inspired change in wonderfully epic ways. Our first elder is Prime Minister Gro Harlem Brundtland. In 1981, Prime Minister Brundtland became Norway's first female prime minister and also the country's youngest at age 41. Her wide-ranging passions, from being a Harvard-trained physician to a champion for women's rights to her deep concern for environmental protection, led her to become one of the country's most revered leaders. Prime Minister Brundtland has been on the forefront of major issues long before they were on the public's radar or on a politician's desk. As Director General of the World Health Organization, she led the first movement to reduce tobacco use worldwide and was the first to identify and promote health as a human right. She established and chaired the World Commission on Environment and Development, where she helped first define the concept of sustainable development and make it a commonplace notion. She continued that pioneering work as a UN Special Envoy on climate change. And as a peace builder, the Prime Minister encouraged reconciliation in countries around the world. One of the first to broker an Israeli-Palestinian agreement, it was her quiet diplomatic efforts that led to the breakthrough of the Oslo Peace Accord. Another elder with us today, Ms. Hina Jalani, is an incredible force for good in the field of human rights. Nearly 4 decades ago, she founded Pakistan's first all-women law firm and went on to win landmark cases that have set new standards for human rights, particularly for women, children, minorities, and prisoners. Her deep resolve for justice and democracy and equality have guided her career. She has shaped her country in important ways. It was through her work that the first child labor laws were mandated in Pakistan. And as women were fleeing abusive marriages, child marriages, and honor killings, she founded a shelter providing legal counsel and support and started Pakistan's first legal aid center. She founded the Human Rights Commission of Pakistan, an independent body to monitor human rights abuses and change public opinion. Ms. Jalani became the first special representative of the United Nations Secretary General on human rights defenders, where her work empowered and protected people worldwide. And in 1992, she was appointed Advocate of the Supreme Court of Pakistan. Twice she's been appointed by the UN to serve on fact-finding missions to Darfur and Gaza. And while it's correct to say she embodies the truth that one person can make a difference in the world, she does not work alone. Ms. Jalani's leadership was stewarded by people who came before her, and she's also helped convene others and build systems to improve human rights across Southeast Asia and globally. Our last elder needs little introduction. Archbishop Desmond Tutu is one of the most loved and respected peacemakers of our time. Archbishop Tutu began his career as a high school teacher, but racial segregation pushed him and other Black teachers out of the classroom. He turned to the Christian ministry and also worked tirelessly to end apartheid in South Africa. He was awarded a Nobel Peace Prize and was asked by President Mandela to chair South Africa's Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Since then, he has traveled the world to help many countries engage in a constructive conflict resolution process. He's also written many books on the power of forgiveness, restorative justice, and love, so that we may help heal and work towards conflict prevention in the future. In 2007, Nelson Mandela asked Archbishop Tutu to help form and to chair the elders, a post he held till last year. The Archbishop is now an honorary elder, so we are especially delighted he's here with us today. But I think it's because he loves Hawaii and his fellow elders so much. He is regarded as a moral compass for all. All of the elders are personal heroes to me, but none more than Arch. I have yet to be with him, listening to him speak, where I have not been moved to tears, burst into laughter, and filled with hope, and all within a few minutes. Lastly, we are joined by our moderator, James Kapai Ali'i Scott. Most of you know Jim from his role as president of Punahou School. What you may not know is Jim's lifelong passion for excellence in education. After graduating from Punahou, he went on to earn an undergraduate degree from Stanford, a master's degree from the University of San Francisco, and a doctorate from Harvard. Jim remains a sought-after speaker and leader throughout the country. In his time at Punahou, the school has made notable milestones, including a deep commitment to increasing access to education through financial aid. He launched the Student Global Leadership Institute to build an international group of student leaders committed to positive social change. Jim also loves racquetball and playing the ukulele, and as a dad, he's an expert carpooler for kids' activities. Jim is a most fitting leader to guide our conversation today. Please join me in giving them an aloha-filled welcome as they take the stage.
very much. It's a bit cool in here. Ah. Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. It's been just a thrill for me to be backstage with these three, having my own time with them. So as a school leader, it's absolutely thrilling and inspiring for me to connect a generation of elders, global leaders, with the future generation of leaders. So we're honored and we're inspired to use your convening power as prominent elders to build a meaningful conversation with students and their teachers about the responsibilities of what it means to be a global citizen. So in the audience, we have high school students, we have college students, public and private schools, different ages, different backgrounds, probably different neighborhoods. But in spite of their differences, they have in common a common future or common destiny. They inherit a common canoe. And they are vitally interested in creating a peaceful world filled with aloha. So this morning, they seek your advice. They seek your counsel, your insight. And their questions, as I looked at their questions, it provides a framework that you might think about as you touch on these things during our conversation. So here are some of the overarching themes that are on their mind. How can I live a meaningful life? I'm a student. I'm still in school. What can I do? How is the world changing? And what can I do to prepare myself while I'm in school for that changing world? What does it mean to be an educated person in the 21st century? And finally, how do I get started? They're asking, how can I sustain my personal commitment and dedication? So let's get started. It's so great to have you here. So here's I'm going to give our audience a little bit of a context, reference point, a perspective. Just wanted to have you tell us about your early personal journey. Those seminal moments growing up, specific event that maybe led to your activism. And maybe something to think about is what were you doing when you were 20 years old? Prime Minister, do you want to get started?
Well, when I was 20, I was a medical student in the third year. We start at 18. But I was not only a student, I was also active in the policy world by being a young social democrat, together with others, making student bodies for social democratic values and policies. So I was already, taking a stand and having opinions and working with others to pursue certain goals. Yeah.
Archbishop?
Yes, I'm trying to remember that far back. Yes, I think I was just coming out of hospital. I'd had a 2-year bout with tuberculosis, and I'd always dreamt of becoming a doctor, and so one of the things that happened to me was I was quite determined. I wanted to find a cure for this awful disease, and I managed to be admitted to medical school at what is called the University of the Witwatersrand in Johannesburg. But we didn't, my parents, my father was a school teacher, my mother was a domestic worker, and they didn't have the fees so I had to forfeit my place, and then managed to get a scholarship to go to a teacher training college. Bless you.
Ms. Gilani.
Yeah, well, like Archbishop Tutu, it's difficult to remember that far back. But now that you've got me thinking, when I was 20, I had already led a students' rally against a military dictator. Of course, I got rusticated from college for doing that. But I come from a background where politics was always a part of our life. My father was an opposition politician fighting against military rule in my country and very frequently was arrested. So all through my childhood, there were very few times that he was at home. Most of the time he was in jail. And so there was always this kind of a mini crisis. The minute he got arrested, there were certain things that had to be done. Cases had to be filed in courts, arrangements made to see him in jail. So that kind of environment was always there. I didn't consciously think that I myself would step into that kind of a role any time in my life. But I think if you were of that age in Pakistan and were an aware, conscious citizen, there was very little you could do to avoid it. And because I went into a profession, I'm a lawyer, it became very kind of logical to step into the area of human rights and the protection and promotion of human rights. So the first thing, of course, I remember was in terms of, even while I was still studying as a lawyer, my time was spent a lot in prisons, working for political prisoners and trying to help the senior lawyers build cases, go and look into, and this is something that our father also always taught us, that when there is a movement on, you have to make sure that those in prison have the assurance that their families are being looked after. So I think that's something that we always did, because he felt that if you do not make the political worker comfortable, they will not be able to make the sacrifice of going to jail. So these were the kind of activities that I remember being involved in during my teenagers and, early 20s.
Thank you. When you're young, it's hard to connect the dots going forward. When you're older, it's easier to connect the dots. As you're going into your social and political consciousness, was there one moment, that seminal event that led to your activism? Was there one person?
In my case, I cannot say, because both my parents were, value-based idealists for a better society. And I learned from both of them. I grew up in a home where it was obvious that both the boys and the girls of the family would be treated equally. That was the conviction of my parents. So in a way, I grew up in a home where the values were instilled into me, and of course, I questioned. I made my own decisions as a young woman, but I certainly had all of this from my own home.
I ended up having qualified as a teacher, and I went to teach high school. I taught English and history. I can't say I met my future wife. She was chosen for me, really. She was my my younger sister's friend. And I was the only son. So my younger sister said, well, why don't you, what about my friend Leia? and so I gather I was very unromantic in my proposal to her, because I said to her, I didn't even say, well, I love you. I said, my parents want me to get married. and she was sort of taken aback. But then she left, and later on wrote me a letter to say, well, I think I want to help you to obey your parents. But so both of us were teaching. She was teaching in an elementary school. And then the apartheid government introduced something called Bantu education, which was quite, it was deliberate, inferior. They didn't make any bones about it. I mean, Dr. Verwoerd, who was then Minister of Bantu Affairs, said, what's the point of teaching blacks mathematics and science? You've got to teach them just enough English and Afrikaans so that they can understand instructions given to them by their white masters and mistresses. And both Leah and I said, no, thank you. We really don't want to be part of this travesty. I didn't have very many choices, so I thought maybe, I might become a priest. Unfortunately for me, the Bishop of Johannesburg then thought I was a reasonable risk to take. And yes, one thing led to another. And both of us resigned from teaching, and Leah went to train as a nurse. And eventually I ended up at theological college.
Okay. Lots of questions about leadership out there and how you become a leader. Was leadership thrust upon you? Did you seek it? I guess the question I would have is, what's the most important leadership principle you've learned along the way?
I don't know if I would call myself a leader, but I'm certainly a part of a very meaningful movement. And I think one of the things that struck me at a very early age was that the kind of work that I and others who wanted to contribute to a better life in my country, we felt that we couldn't go into isolation. And the best protection for us was always to gather around ourselves people who thought like us and who wanted what we had envisioned together and in a collective way. So I think that the best thing was to be able to convince people, and if you can call it a leadership quality, of course that's fine. But what I learned was to be able to first convince myself that what I was thinking and my vision was not only true, but it was a vision which was for the collective good. And then to be able to convince others that this is something worthwhile, and it is worth taking the time, the energy, and taking something out of your personal lives and putting that in the second kind of place to be able to go forward with these movements. I think this was really something that I felt was important in anybody who was trying to build movements and to sustain them.
So in your example, it's the power of persuasion.
Yes.
That's good. Others? Good.
Well, I think leadership qualities is first of all of us have some of that in us. You know, we're all born with certain qualities, certain potential, and the question is to find out where your own inspiration comes from and what, in fact, you can do to contribute. Because normally, whatever you choose to do, you learn from the choice you made, you learn from others, you work with others, and you find out what makes you tick. What is the passion that, due to your commitments and your own convictions, that you feel are important from your perspective and that you want to give priority. Now, normally then, as you move on in life, and as you go from being a child thinking in those terms and then into student years and further on, you all the time gather new knowledge and insight from others, and you help inspire others. So, as I listened to Hina yesterday, Hina said, even in a stronger way, I'm not sure I'm a leader, when she was asked. But certainly you can hear when you listen to Hina, she is a leader. She is born in that way, and she has created the kind of life that makes her a leader. Now, when you start thinking, how can I convince others? I mean, why would you like to convince others? Because you believe in something strongly. And you want to have those values or those goals shared with others so that things can move in the right direction. When you start thinking, how can I convince others on something that has to do not with convince to give you money or to support you. I'm talking in a broader sense about things that have value for society or for improving life for other people. Then you have leadership qualities and you develop them.
Can I ask you, did you give them a preview of the questions? They answer so eloquently.
There was no cheating.
I think
They weren't handed the script.
let me just say. I was thrust into a leadership position. Not very many people can believe me when I say that, in fact, I am quite shy. Yes. But our leaders were in jail. Our leaders were in exile. Our leaders were held under some restriction or other. And then I happened to be, well, yes, I say I happened, but yes, I became Dean of Johannesburg, which was a fairly senior position in the church. And sort of willy-nilly, I got to be a leader because, well, as they got, nature doesn't allow for vacuums, so I filled that vacuum in Johannesburg, which was a fairly, it's a major city, and so things that the dean did, especially being I was the first black to be Dean of Johannesburg. And the media, I have to say, I still do not know why, but for some reason they seem to have taken to me and so gave publicity to almost everything that I said or did, which helped. But we had people, alongside me, like Winnie Mandela. She was an incredible person at the time.
I was also thrust, in a way, into leadership by being asked by the Prime Minister to become Minister of Environment. It was a strange feeling to be, I had no plan. I was a public health practitioner. And he called me to his office and said, I would like you to enter the government. And so, sometimes you have to decide, can you do that? And on the other hand, can you say no?
Yeah.
I had been fighting for women's rights and women being equal to men. So how could I say no when the Prime Minister asked to add a woman into his government? I couldn't. From then on, I was a politician, not a public health expert anymore. Yeah.
So when you look back on your careers, how have you been able to sustain yourself? How do you keep it going? How do you recharge?
I think this is something that Prime Minister Brundtland said yesterday. Support makes a lot of difference. And what encourages you to go on is to look behind and see that there are many people who think like you. And the other thing, of course, is that I mean, coming from the women's rights movement, and also personally, I think it's much more difficult, if we are talking about the power of persuasion, to be a woman and to have the ambition of persuading in societies, some societies, in most societies, I'd say. But having that kind of a support encourages you, sustains you through even the most difficult times. The second thing is that you know very well that you're going against the tide. And there is always a temptation to rest. And sometimes we do, and I've learned it from my experience, that you rest too soon. Because if you're going against the tide, you're likely to be kind of swept back when you stop making the effort. And we've had that. We've rested too soon and been swept back. Many times I've seen that. So I think this, for one thing, gives you the energy to go on. And secondly, then the support that you need to sustain yourself, even in adverse times.
Other comments?
Well, I think, you feel that what you are trying to do together with others makes a difference. And you know that if you, as Hina said, if you kind of stop, you cannot move forward. And so you have your passion gets increased and kept, sustained, as you said, by seeing that what you're doing in fact makes a difference. And that can contain you, sustain you for decades until you are 75 and more.
I'm slightly different. I mean what I mean. Not what you are thinking. I have been sustained by very, very many people around the world. One of the things about our own particular struggle was the fact that there was something called the anti-apartheid movement, which was a global movement. At one time, the South African government, in harassing me, took away my passport, for instance. And sort of almost the following day in our mail, I got a parcel sent from New York, and it was Sunday school children in a church in New York who had made pictures and they sent me their, what they called their passports of love. And you don't actually know just how much that meant to us, the support that we gathered from the international community. Having people say they prayed for you, and the people who demonstrated on our behalf. And that was a very singular source of inspiration. And then perhaps because, I mean, I'm sure that Hina and Gro would have that too, that they are people of faith. And so at some moments in their day, they would spend quiet and gain from that, yes, I mean, supernatural power, inspiration. And it is for real. It is for real. And I want to assure you that it is a fantastic thing to realize that when you are a crowd, and you stand out in a crowd because they say you are the leader. Do you know what? You're standing out only because you are being carried on the shoulders of others. I mean, if I calling for sanctions as I did and for divestment in South Africa, if the people, so-called the ordinary people, had repudiated me, I would have been nothing. But it was that those people, the masses that were often treated with disdain, where they were the real McCoy, you know. They were the ones who, if I hadn't got them, I would be just a clanging cymbal.
Wow. Thank you. One of the people in the audience in preparing for today wants to actually have you address a current case study, given your perspective and your insight. If you could intervene in the Israeli-Gaza conflict to restore peace in the region, what would you do? What would be your strategy? Let's start with the Prime Minister, the politician.
You know, back in 1992 already, which is now more than 20 years, people of my administration were secretly working between representatives of Israel and Palestine, and gradually created sufficient confidence between those groups, or those leaders, that we were able to announce an agreement about the goal that there had to be two states, and you had the handshake between Arafat and Rabin on the lawn of the White House, because we decided, although Norway was inspiring all of this, we wanted the strongest leader in the world, Bill Clinton, to have, or one of the strong leaders, to sign up to this and help it get impact. Now, this, of course, now is 22 years ago, and we are seeing the tragedy of what has not happened. They have not moved towards a two-state solution. And we see the tragedy of the children and the people of Gaza under occupation, in fact. And the world community has not been able, in any, effective way, to create the conditions that the two parties are able to agree. I mean, we saw Foreign Minister Kerry now pushing hard in a kind of, trying again for I don't know what number of times to get a peace treaty between the two parties. And now thousands of people have been killed and so on. Now, I mean, there is no solution to this, in my opinion, except a two-state solution, where the Israeli respect and are able to realize that they have to live side by side on equal terms with the Palestinians, that both Israel and the Palestinians have their right to their own state and to live in peace together. I don't see any other solution, but we have also seen over these more than 2 decades that they haven't succeeded.
Care to comment?
Let me say, I have been to Gaza, and I was there in 2009, just after the Operation Cast Lead, which was the war on Gaza at that time. And I know that a lot of things that would be able to bring about what you have said, Prime Minister, can happen. But if I had the opportunity of doing what you said and engaging with the issue, first thing that I think the first strategy would be to bring about a consensus on three essential things. First, that the occupation must end. Second, as you have said, to construct a formula of coexistence that would make both Israel and the Palestinian state secure. It can be any formula. It doesn't necessarily have to be we are good friends. They will not be for a long time. But some formula that will either separate their interests to an extent where they will not engage in hostilities. Something. Thirdly, to make sure that there is a consensus and a firm commitment of the international community to have a Palestinian state that is viable. A moth-eaten Palestine will be no assurance of security for anyone, Israel or otherwise. And it will also not be a good solution to the Israel-Palestinian situation because the hostilities will not cease. So these three essential factors, and how do we go about it? The basic thing is keep them engaged, keep them into a dialogue so that they do not harm each other's civilian population by committing acts of hostility. That will be what we do in the meantime before we come to that kind of consensus. But now I think it is urgent. Too many lives have been lost. It is the international community's responsibility now to give a very firm message that deviations from the rule of law and the accepted standard of international humanitarian law will not be acceptable. And that international justice will be done and impunity cannot prevail anymore. For that, we have to make sure that wherever these deviations are found and there is a conclusion that they have happened, the international accountability mechanisms must be brought into action. There should be no shying away from that. Because, of course, the aim is to move towards peace. But the center and at the core of peace is justice. It is an indispensable feature of peace to have justice. So I think these are some of the things that I would probably want to go forward with.
I have a follow-up question, and I think this is probably it's best going to Archbishop. And it's from someone's Twitter. Ending violent conflict is not the end of the battle. How can we help those devastated by conflict to heal?
Mm-hmm. Well, I suppose, I mean, the first thing would be to have ensured that there would be no repetition of what caused the trauma in the first place, and then yes, I mean the things that Hina put forward. I mean, I wanted to say, in all of this, I mean, for us, it isn't theorizing. You know, it is that we hurt. It might appear as if I mean one was being melodramatic. We hurt in the anguish of both sides. And to speak for myself, my deepest anguish is what the Israelis are doing to themselves in what is happening. At home, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we there was one of the largest demonstrations. I've not seen anything like it in South Africa before. There must have been about 100,000 people, whatever. But I mean, it was a massive, and I was asked to, as it was, send them off with a prayer. But before I prayed, I reminded the people. I said, you know, when we were struggling against apartheid, we were against injustice. We were against oppression. We were against all of that evil. But we were not anti-white. It is important as you set out on this demonstration to say that you are anti-oppression, anti-injustice, anti-occupation, but you're not anti-Jew. And when I said that, a number of hands went up, and because I said, because in this demonstration there are many Jews, and the hands went up. It is quite important. It is absolutely crucial. And you know, I mean, we know that there are those people that were in Tel Aviv. I gather there were about 10,000 who demonstrated there. It is I am in deep anguish because I have seen in South Africa what happens to people when they carry out policies that are unjust. That whether they like it or not, those policies dehumanize them. And when we had the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, we saw the extent of that dehumanization. And I pray, God, will you please hear us? Please know that we love all of your people, and pray that the Israelis should not damage themselves as they are now in the inhumane policies that they carry out against. How could we have someone just pick off 4 children playing on the beach? What has happened to the humanity of that person? And so for me, it is a personal anguish that, I mean, we are not here just speaking to interest you. We are speaking, and I hope that it will be something that can get to be broadcast.
Thank you. You know, in the time we have left, we just want to move to as many questions as we can from the audience. Actually, here's one for the Prime Minister. What's the biggest challenge you faced? And what can the United States learn from Norway?
Oh, wow. The biggest challenge I faced, what was that? It's series of challenges, you know. But in the beginning, when I was this young environment minister, I remember coming to a meeting of industrial leaders across the country with 3 of my male colleagues in government. They had their yearly conference. And I came in, I was only a few weeks into office. I came into this large conference room, and I then realized I was the only woman among 200 people, except for one secretary of the CEO of the present, where we were, of that industrial plant. She was at the back of the room taking notes. I realized, that a society like Norway, this was 1974, had the men dominating the society by being the leaders of the business community completely. So it was a kind of revelation to me to see it in physical terms like this, even in my country. So the challenge was, how do I help overcome this inequality and difference between men and women? So that's part of what I've been doing the rest of my life, in my country and internationally, where with elders now, we have picked child marriage as one important global challenge. That had been, it was not on the radar screen. It was not talked about, really, 4 years ago when we really started taking that issue on and speaking out about it. What is it that when you have a child, maybe 8, 10, or 12 years old, her destiny is decided by the society, by her parents, by the culture, by the tradition. Her life is determined. She's forced to marry before she's even mature. Now, this is going on now in the world. Many places, many more places than what people are aware. Yes. But there are so many of these kinds of issues. So it's not one challenge. There are several. Yeah.
And what can we learn from Norway?
Well, you can learn that it is possible through political action, activism, policies, democracy, to move things in the right direction. Today, the fathers in Norway are not only, pushing what do you call it?
Prem.
Yeah, the prams. In my time, my husband pushed the pram. He was exceptional when we had small children in 61, 63, and onward. He was nearly alone doing that. Today, not only do they all push the pram, but they stay home for months taking care of their children because of the rules we have made of society. Parental leave is not
Can I just
only for mothers. Parental leave is also for fathers. And if they don't take the parental leave, then the family will not get those months. Wow. You can make these kinds of policy decisions and change society by changing the rules of society. Yeah.
Can I just add, the thing that all of the world should learn from Norway, actually from the Nordic countries, is the egalitarianism. You don't see a beggar on the streets in Norway or Denmark if they've got very high taxation, yes, but you see the benefits. Somebody gets ill, they get the best treatment you could provide. Children want to go to school. They go to school. You go to school from kindergarten to university, and it's free. Well, your parents paid for it through the taxation, but there are no, these incredible differences, disparities in society. In our country already now, the gap between the rich and the poor is the worst in the world.
May I also add
Sure.
something? I think what is very important to know, especially about Norway, and I speak from my experience of Norway as a donor country, it goes much deeper than just responsibility for their citizens. I think in their international relations, there is a very distinct impression that you get that there is respect for the human person and for the dignity of those they try to help. I have never seen any kind of aid coming from Norway that has any kind of strings attached. And it becomes so easier, therefore, so much easier for civil society actors to become recipients of that support and their financial partnership. Because as independent people, having nothing else to show in our lives, just our own integrity and independence, we at least can very freely enjoy the benefit of that financial cooperation, which is a part of our human rights standards. You know that both the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the one on social and economic rights says that governments must benefit from financial cooperation in bringing development and welfare to their people. What applies to governments also applies to civil society if the objective is the same, the development and welfare of the people. So this I can say very clearly about Norway and other Nordic countries, that we do not have any hesitation in accepting that financial cooperation with them. With the US, you know, there are many countries, many NGOs and civil society people in third world countries, in developing countries, who do not take as a principle US AID financial support. For this very reason, transparency and lack of respect for independence and autonomy of human rights movements and human rights organizations.
In addition to this question, you know, Norway and Sweden, Denmark, more or less also, 1% of GDP. That's a lot of money. And it's 7 times, 10 times more than what the US does per person, per GDP. So again, you know, to look at all the challenges of the world, you need to be supporting in a real way and on the principles that Hina just mentioned, the world going forward on human rights, fighting environmental problems, overcoming climate. You need to really show that kind of solidarity, that you share your own resource base with the world in a systematic manner and at a level that is decent.
Excellent.
Yeah.
You know, before we bring it back to their future, we have one more question that came through Twitter. It's this. What do you believe to be the greatest impediment to peace?
Egoism. People thinking about themselves. Looking at, not looking at the whole, but looking at being competitive with others. That's just a source of lack of peace, I think. You know, if you look at it from an ethical point of view.
Okay. I wonder, though. I agree. I agree. You got to be very careful not to agree with the women. I agree entirely. But what has happened in so many countries that people are accepting the fact that you spend more money on making bombs and other items which are going to be used to kill people, to maim people. We spend more on that than willing to spend. I mean, we hear of a child over there dying because she didn't have clean water. What has happened to civic society that it doesn't say, no, man, we can't allow ourselves. In many of these Western countries, you are bullied by the manufacturers of things that are made to kill, and we sort of shrug our shoulders, and no, you know, we can feed everybody on earth. We've got the capacity. You young people, for goodness sake, get out there and say you want to change the ethos of your societies, that you are not going to be bullied by the manufacturers of bombs. Can you think that a few years ago, this country dropped 2 atom bombs, and the destruction that happened? Why do we continue when we know how we can make the world a place where there's no child who would not be able to grow? They would get cheap inoculations. Children die. Do you know how many children die? 20,000 per, I don't know, something. Horrendous. You ought not to say, you ought not to be allowing this to happen. You ought to say, no, 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 not in my name. Not in my name. It is abominable. It's unconscionable that children die because they don't have clean water. Children die because they can't afford cheap inoculations against smallpox or whatever. And here we are investing in many of the industrialized countries billions. I would hope you will leave from here and say you are going to do all you can. Where are you?
It's very dark.
Ms. Jelani, would you like to add to that? Impediments to peace? Anything you want to add before we...
I think apart from what has already been said, I think the notion of sovereignty, or let us say a misconceived notion of sovereignty, is sometimes the biggest impediment to peace. And that I'm saying because of the different regions that we see in the world where a conflict of interest is not resolved by surrendering a part of that sovereignty for global peace and security and global welfare. And I will give you the example from my part of the world, for instance. Governments have been very adamant on the notion of sovereignty when they have come before international scrutiny for violation of the rights of their people. Now let me say this. Sovereignty, neither states nor governments are sovereign. People are sovereign. And if you claim sovereignty as a means of avoiding international scrutiny for violating the rights of the same people in whose name you claim sovereignty, I think that's a misconceived notion of sovereignty.
Absolutely.
Thank you. You know, we have one question, one last one that I want you each to respond to, and it has to do with your parting advice to students, high school and college students. You, by virtue of your positions, you have a chance to travel the world speaking to young people. And you see what they have in common. And I just wanted to give you a chance to give your parting advice to this group of students?
Well, I mean, I can just say that you've talked about challenges, you've talked about difficulties we've had in our lives, but let me also say that we've had many, many positive things. I have seen many positive changes, even in the difficult struggles that I wage for women's rights, the rights of minority people, etc. Just to give you one example, for instance, many years ago, we started a struggle against certain laws that were discriminatory against women. And people used to make fun of me, saying that you've been standing with a placard for 25 years on the sidewalks, down with such and such a law. Yes, I did stand there for 25 years. We didn't get the laws changed till 25 years elapsed. We got it changed eventually. But in those 25 years, what we succeeded in doing was making visible women as a force to contend with. None of the political parties in my country, from the day that we started this campaign, could ignore women's rights. Those political parties who never spoke about women's rights, every political party manifesto in every election has a women's rights program. So that's a big achievement. I remember a case that I did. Many years ago, when I became aware of a policy that women had to score higher marks in the pre-qualifying exams for medical schools to be able to get the admission there than men. I fought that case. It went right up to the Supreme Court of Pakistan. We got a judgment that today is a precedent, which is quoted every day in courts to get the right of equality, not just for women, but for everyone else as well. So I think there are many, many positive and good experiences that we have, and that's what sustains us. These are achievements which are significant.
Parting word of advice to this young audience, Prime Minister?
Well, I mean, it's nice to be here in Hawaii and knowing that you have this aloha. It's one thing, but you know, it's an expression that carries a lot of wisdom in it, but also the fact that people here, historical reasons and others, are mixed. They are not, ethnic majorities. It's all different kinds of backgrounds and cultures all together. So you are, in a way, a small world in itself, which means that looking across the oceans and looking across the whole of the world, you have every reason to be confident that you can see humanity as a whole, because you have a small piece of it, even here on the island, together, and you can reach out and look at all the global issues that more and more in your lifetime will be obvious. Fighting climate change to avoid next generations to have a problem that we should have solved in our time. So those are, and look at the beautiful islands. You already have consequences of environmental and climate change that you can see with your own eyes. Sea level rise, changes of water patterns, many issues that already are here showing what's happening to the world at large.
Good thoughts. Archbishop Tutu, you have the last word.
Yeah, I'm very smart about that. Yeah. I want to say to you, I want to say to you, young people, one of the most wonderful things about yourselves is just how idealistic you are. I have traveled around the world 3 times on something called Semester at Sea. You may have heard of it. If you haven't, look out for it and say you want to have a chance on that ship. It's about 600 college students, mostly from the United States, who go right around the world for a semester, and they work. When you're at sea, there is no Sunday, there's no Saturday. It's classes all the time. And then when you get to a harbor, there are no classes. Hooray. Without fail, all of those different groups of students impressed me by the fact of their being so idealistic. Idealistic. You've heard how they speak of making poverty history. It was amazing each time those young people thought that they would be able to change the world. I want you to go out believing that you have the capacity to change the world. Young people like yourselves and older were some of the most important groups that supported us in our struggle against apartheid. President Reagan was totally opposed to sanctions being applied. Students, not they exclusively, but students particularly, worked very hard to get their institutions divesting. And they were able to change the moral climate in this country. And so Congress was able to pass the anti-apartheid legislation with a presidential veto override. You can do the same. You can do the same. You can, hey, know something? Some of God's best collaborators have been young people. Joseph, David, Jeremiah, who complained that he was too young to become a prophet, Mary. Imagine if the archangel had said to Mary, yes, God wants you to be the mother of God's son. If Mary had said, what? I'm a decent girl. Sorry, try next door. We would have been in a real pickle. God depends on you. For this world to be a world that is going to survive and have no war. For this world to be a world where we begin to share more equitably. Hey, God's world is in your hands. You, 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 you. And God is saying,
Yeah.
What a thrill and an honor and a privilege to spend an hour with these three. Mahalo for all of your time here. We thank you.
Thank you. You have child dancers.
Thank you again, Jim, for doing an exceptional job moderating and getting the soul and just context of all of our thoughts and questions before the elders this morning. Great job. And we do have Keiki Hula coming, but before that, could you please join me in thanking again Prime Minister Gru Brundtland, Ms. Hina Jelani, and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And we concur that the greatest way we can honor this experience that we've been blessed with the elders today is to embrace their knowledge and become active leaders in our communities. And we do hope that each of you has been inspired today to think about how you can become a pillar of peace in your own life. Your aloha is a gift to your family, your friends, to Hawaii, and the world. And we're so grateful that you came to Hawaii to be with us. And during their visit, they're also involved in 8 public and private events as part of the Pillars of Peace Hawaii program. They'll interact with students, leaders, private citizens, and their messages will reach audience throughout the world while they're here through live webcasts. I'd also like to take a moment to recognize the leaders of the Elders organization that have joined us for this visit. Leslie Ann Knight, CEO of the Elders. And Jennifer Woodside, Communications Director for the Elders. We will now close the program with hula to express our thanks and appreciation to the elders for sharing so much with us today. It'll be performed by Na Keiki o Halau Hula Olana, the children's performing group of the School of Living Hula. They've been charming audiences in Hawaii for more than 2 decades. This company of dancers ranges in age from 6 to 13 years old, and they're trained and led by Olana Ai, Kumuhula and founder of the school. Please join me in welcoming Halau Hula Olana as they perform our closing number, Surround Me with Love.
Sometimes when life's piercing arrow shoots me to the ground, dreams come falling down, friends just can't be found. I don't worry, I don't wonder, I know what to do. I don't go crazy, I just go for you. Surround me with love, I need you beside me. I want you to hold and hide me when this world is closing in on me. Yeah. Surround me with love. Oh, I know I can make it. Whatever comes, you know I can take it. Just as long as you surround me with love. Who can say what comes tomorrow, what the future holds, what lies down the road? Heaven only knows. But there's one thing I know for certain, one thing that is true. Yahweh, I love you. Yes, every sunrise, I love you. I love you. Until the sun sets, I love you. I love you. And every moment hereafter, until the morning dew. Aloha, Yahweh, I love you. Surround me with love. I need you beside me. I want you to hold and hide me when this world is closing in on me. Yeah. Surround me with love. Oh, I know I can make it. Whatever comes, you know I can take it. Just as long as you surround me with love. Just as long as you surround me with
Thank you, Nakeki o Halau Hula Olana. And thank you again to the elders and to you all for joining us for Our Leaders Make the Future, the wisdom of the elders and the younger. We're just so glad to have you here. We hope you enjoyed this Pillars of Peace event. Please remain seated until the elders exit the theater. Thank you all again.